Good afternoon. I'm your host, Jimmy Kim, and you're watching the greatest show on the planet, The Jimmy Kim Show. To the audience out there, thank you so much for tuning in today. We have an awesome episode. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing former Fort Bend County top constable, retired U.S. Army colonel, and also a current chief business executive. So we're going to go and start. And Trever, thank you for coming to the studio. And go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Jimmy, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon. It's a wonderful honor to be on your show. And I look forward to this interview to let people in Fort Bend County know a little bit more about me and what my background.
Sure. All right. So let's go and start with, some background about yourself, and feel free to talk about your family as well.
Well, Jimmy, you know that I've been in Fort Bend County for 30 years, and I was a law enforcement officer, 20 years with the Sugar Land Police Department, and then I served with the Constable's office as the elected Precinct 4 Constable, which encompasses a good majority of Sugar Land, Missouri City, and now I'm into the independent sector. For example, I'm the CEO of a biotech firm, and we can get into that here in a little bit.
Right.
But as a 30-year law enforcement professional in Fort Bend County, I know a lot of people in Fort Bend County, and a lot of people know who Trever Nehls is. It's clear that my twin brother Troy Nehls is the elected congressman. We're identical twins. We're quite often, it's confusing for people, which one am I talking to? But we have a long history in Fort Bend County, and it's been 30 years. So, but I grew up in the state of Wisconsin. As you can probably tell, I have an accent that is not Texas.
It's unique.
It's unique, and it's a Midwestern accent, the state of Wisconsin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'm one of 7 siblings. I have 5 older brothers and an older sister, and I and my twin brother Troy are the youngest of the 7. My father served in the Korean War, and he was the recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross, which is one below the Medal of Honor, Jimmy, for his actions in Korea. And growing up, he was our hero as a result of what he did fighting for our country in the U.S. Army in the Korean War. But then he returns from Korea, Jimmy, and he entered the law enforcement field. And he was a law enforcement professional in Dodge County, Wisconsin. It's a smaller county, maybe 85,000 people, but he was the elected sheriff. So he moved up through the ranks and became the elected sheriff.
Right.
So when I think of my background as a 30-year law enforcement professional and then 33 years within the Army National Guard, Army Reserve, I'm thinking, why did all that take place? It took place because that's exactly what my father did. I have an older brother, Todd. He was also the elected sheriff in Dodge County, Wisconsin. He's no longer the sheriff, but he was also a 35-year military professional in the U.S. Army. And then, of course, my twin brother, Troy, who was the constable in Precinct 4, Fort Bend County Sheriff, and now he's a congressional member. He also did 21 years in the U.S. Army, retiring as the grade of major. So when I think about where I am today, I'm going to be 54 years old in April.
You look way younger than that,
Well,
Trever.
and I appreciate that. It's clean living, Jimmy. But I think of,
I like that.
I think of those years serving as a public servant, selfless service, not selfish service to the community, whether it's in law enforcement, military. I do that because that's what my father taught me, and that's what he did, and I couldn't be more proud of what he did for his community and also our country.
Yeah, so it seems like you and your brother got all of your inspiration from your father.
Without
That's
question.
what it seems like. Yeah.
Without question.
Sounds like a great individual.
Yes.
Is he still
No,
around?
he's been dead for about 14 years now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I wish I could have met him and told him thank
Yes.
you. Well, thank you and your brother and then the rest of your family for your
Yes.
service in the military and law enforcement, and
Yes.
also in public as an elected official right now, your brother. And yeah, that's very important for me to say that because my ancestry is actually Korean American.
Okay.
So I'm thankful for your father for fighting, alongside South Korea, and that's actually why I'm here.
You know, he was with the 45th Infantry Division in Oklahoma. So when he was still with us, we traveled up to Oklahoma with him to visit the 45th Infantry Division Museum. And of course, when you're a Distinguished Service Cross recipient or Medal of Honor recipient, your names are in the books up there. And his name's up in the books within the 45th Infantry Division out of Oklahoma. So
So he's a legend.
Well,
War hero.
anybody
Yeah.
that receives, Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, or any other award,
Yeah.
it's you have to appreciate their service because it can cost one their lives
Right.
by serving in war, and war can be very tragic. But anybody that serves in the military, I think they're great Americans.
Yeah, I certainly.
Simply put, just great Americans,
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I thank all military people that have served in law enforcement,
Yes.
military, and even our firefighters. But then the people that earn those decorations, that's like another level of
Yes.
respect. And I seldom give that out, just like on a silver platter.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, that's definitely the ones that achieve and receive and that are awarded for those highest decorations. That's on a different level.
Indeed.
And I know you have a lot of those yourself. We'll discuss that a little bit later.
Sure.
But if you can, I know you had a long tenure in the Army, and when you retired just a little while ago, you achieved the rank of colonel. Is that correct?
Yes, I retired last August.
Right.
On August 1st of 2021 at the rank of colonel. That's 33 years of continuous service.
Wow, that's a long time.
And,
That's almost, I said this earlier. That's almost as long as
Yeah,
I've been born
yes.
on this planet, Trevor. So thank you.
You're welcome. So I entered service
Sure.
in 1988 as an infantryman, went to Fort Bend, Georgia, did all the infantry training and so on. And I was an enlisted person for about 3 years before I attended officer candidate school. So there's a difference between officer rank and enlisted rank. But I felt that I had the leadership potential to go on to be an officer. So in 1991, I graduated from the officer candidate school, becoming commissioned as a second lieutenant. And then, of course, you got to do a certain number of years as a second lieutenant, prove yourself, and then you make first lieutenant, and then you do well as a captain, and then major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, and so on within the military ranks. But it took 33 years for me to achieve the rank of colonel. But in those 33 years, and they were wonderful years, Jimmy, multiple combat deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait. But I had the opportunity to lead troops at the company level as a company commander.
What's the size for that?
Well, it
How
just
many troops?
depends. It depends what companies. But the company I had was a combat engineer company. There may be 190.
Okay.
But you're a
Sizable
captain.
amount,
You've been in the service 6, 8, 10 years. You're still fairly junior. And then I had a command as a battalion as a lieutenant colonel. Now you're looking at anywhere between 17 and 22, 23 years of service as a battalion commander.
Right.
And it was a true honor to be selected to command a brigade. And brigade commanders are full colonels, the Eagle. We call them full colonels.
Yes.
Because you have lieutenant colonel and colonel. And that was the last command I had. And then it was a little over 2 years ago, I was deployed to Kuwait, where I served as a staff officer, as a colonel, on a 2-star general's staff. And we did that for 9 months. I came back in April of 20.
I think that's when we met, when you came back.
Yeah, that's possible. I
Around
mean,
that
we were
time.
at the height of COVID.
Right.
I mean, so things weren't moving as rapidly as I thought when I returned. But it was sort of the onset of COVID.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know in that long tenure, your career as a military officer, there's probably many stories to tell. I wish we could share all of them
Yes,
today, but
yes.
we only have, an hour. So
Yes.
next, can you describe to us your career as a constable? So you're Fort Bend County, which precinct?
I was the elected constable of Precinct 4.
Okay, precinct 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And back
if you can
then-
tell us about. Yeah.
Now the lines have been redrawn.
Oh,
but,
yeah,
But
that's right,
Precinct
yeah.
4 at the time was a good majority of Sugarland, and then it had parts of Missouri City, and it ran out 99 to like Waterside, Fieldstone, Longmeadow Farms, sort of those new areas along 99 that have been in existence maybe the last 10 to 15 years. So I was the constable of Precinct 4, and I was a 2-term constable.
8 years?
8 years, 2 4-year terms, and I left Sugarland after 20 years as a result of winning the election in 2012 to be the constable in 2013. Otherwise, I'd probably be at Sugarland Police today. Don't know what role or what capacity I would be serving in, but I enjoyed my service as the constable of Precinct 4 for 8 years, and then I decided to run for sheriff as a result of my brother leaving that position to run for Congress.
Yes.
So I thought I would be a perfect transition, leave from the constable's office and go over to the sheriff's office. But that didn't work out in 2020, and here we are today.
Well, I always say this, even the best of us, you win some, you lose some.
Yes.
It's just part of life. So.
Indeed.
But I'm glad you're still fighting.
Oh,
you're
yes.
still out. Because some of the people that are not, if they don't win, I never
Yes.
see them again.
Yes.
And some of those are really good
Yes.
people. And going a little bit back to your military career, so I wasn't aware you're a Mustang officer as well. So you saw the enlisted side and the
Yes,
officer side.
indeed I did.
So you got a lot more respect
Yes.
from the troops.
So Jimmy, I was digging plenty of foxholes.
I'm sure you
when
were.
I was a
Yeah.
private and a specialist.
yeah.
But then I wanted to get into the leadership.
Right.
That's
Okay.
exactly
I wasn't
what I
aware of
did.
that, but
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
that's very interesting. Because as I just said, I know the Mustang officers get a bit more respect because they've
Yes.
been in the enlisted person's
Indeed.
shoes rather than like fresh out of school,
That's
ROTC.
They've been there, they've done that.
Exactly.
As you hear that.
Yeah,
adage.
yeah. And that makes a big difference.
It does.
Because otherwise, how can you have that relatability if you've never been there?
And the enlisted, specifically your sergeants, staff sergeants, platoon sergeants,
Right.
they'll know whether you came out of the enlisted rank.
Oh, they can tell
Everybody
right away.
knows. Yeah, they can
right
pick
away.
it out just like that. Indeed.
Just a few sentences that they
Yes.
already know. Yeah.
Yes.
Next, Trevor. So you're currently the chief executive officer and president of a Fort Bend County biotechnology company. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, yes. So tell us more
So,
about that as well.
It was about 18 months ago where a company sought me out and we had an interview and they explained what they do at a local biotech company here in Richmond, Texas. And they says, we would love you for your leadership to get us in the right direction. They recognized my 30 years of law enforcement service and my military record, and they thought, well, look at this guy. He's achieved a very high rank in the military.
Yes.
He was a leader in law enforcement. He's got leadership skills. So I joined the company, and that's what I'm doing today as the president of the company. What we do each and every day is we produce a liquid organic fertilizer. So it's agriculturally based. If you put the liquid and you use it on a farm, no matter what plant you grow, it'll increase the yield of the plant. You get significant yield increase in the plant.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, what's unique about it is our product breaks down pesticide residues. And you know, the lands throughout the world are highly contaminated because the amount of fertilizers,
Right.
pesticides being used on soils.
Yes.
And I understand why farmers use insecticides, herbicides, prevent weeds, things of that nature. And I get it, I understand it. But the end product that comes out of the soil, it could be riddled with pesticide or residues
Right.
that are harmful to the body.
Yes.
So our product, and we have a model, it's called Curing the Earth. So what we want to do as a company is have our product throughout different parts of the world, specifically on lands that are just littered with pesticides or other chemicals, because our product will assist with that, and it'll increase yield in anything you grow on the surface.
And it's a lot cleaner. Is it non-GMO as well?
Yes, in fact,
So
it
it's
is.
organic and non-GMO.
And
Oh.
we have what's called OMRI certification. It's
Yeah.
it's a certification for organic products, and we're very, very proud of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like the sound of the product too. I
Yes.
mean, obviously, I would need more details,
Yes.
but based on what you've told me, I think that's great. Because I personally like organic products as well, and if it helps reduce that pesticide, those substances in the
Yes.
plants and get a better yield, I think it's really good for the environment as well as for us if they're things that we consume.
So this experience, Jimmy, in the private sector
Right.
has been beneficial for me because, you know, if you're in law enforcement, you're working for the government, you're in the military government, but the private sector has really opened my eyes, the importance of business
Right.
and small businesses. And small businesses is really the heartbeat of the American economy. It's the engine that drives it.
Absolutely.
So I've learned that as the president of the biotech company, and I appreciate anyone that starts a business and the risk they take to start a business.
Right.
So I'm an advocate for small business.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a small size company, or about
Yes,
like
we're a
50
budding
employees.
startup. We're a budding startup.
Okay.
We're going to be expanding here in 2022
Okay.
as a result of some of the initiatives that we have taking place throughout the world.
Okay, yeah, I think for anybody out there that's just been in like public service their whole life, yeah, that private sector experience, I think it's critical.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of things that sometimes the government related jobs they don't get exposure to the private sector, and like the importance of, the bottom line and
Yes.
marketing, getting out there, talking to people. So yeah, I think that's great that you're getting to experience all these different things. Yeah, because most people in their lifetime, they just do one of these things that we've discussed.
Yes.
Right, Trevor?
Yes.
So yeah, that's awesome. Next, since you're a former law enforcement officer, Trevor, what is the current state of law enforcement in Fort Bend County and the greater Houston area, as well as your thoughts about like around the country?
Sure. Well, if we start with just Fort Bend County, Fort Bend County is a great county to live. And anyone that's had any time in Fort Bend County, they've seen the growth. But with growth, there can bring problems as a result of growth. Fort Bend County is now over 830,000 people. But if you look statistically, it's one of the safest counties, large-sized counties in the state of Texas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, indeed it is. And that's a credit to the leadership.
Yes.
Whether it's a municipal agency, Sugar Land, Missouri City, Meadows, they all have police chiefs, Rosenberg, Richmond. But it's a credit to the leadership of the law enforcement agencies to stay connected to their community, because you only can have safe communities if the police are connected to the people.
Oh, yeah.
You got to have both.
Oh,
They
yeah,
can't be independent of each other in order to be successful. But I think the state of law enforcement in Fort Bend County is good. I think that we need to continue to keep an eye on some of the trends we see taking place in the larger metropolitan areas.
Right. Like
And I've
Houston.
specifically mentioned Houston
Right.
with some of the issues. But if we go back the last 18 months, 2 years, and some of the rioting that took place, specifically more your defund the police movement. We can't have the movement of defund the police in Fort Bend County. If that movement comes out to Fort Bend County, I think that the residents of Fort Bend County, number one, would reject it. I don't think
hope.
they would buy off on it. But I think we would start to see a negative return or the negative effects of defunding or any sort of defunding the police in Fort Bend County. I am not aware of any movement right now, whether it's a municipal agency or a county agency, where they're going to defund the police in Fort Bend County. But as long as we keep that mentality, that law enforcement is crucial to the safety and security of their community, and we want safe streets, because that ultimately bleeds over into schools, residential values, property values, business startups. But if you don't have good law enforcement in your community, people will recognize that.
Yes.
And then what they do, they either relocate to an area they feel more comfortable, or they just drive on with the situation that exists. But
Right.
that's not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So it creates much of a ripple effect,
Without
as
a
you're
doubt.
saying.
The second and third order effects of
Yeah.
lack of a law enforcement presence in safe and secure streets and communities,
Right.
significant.
Yeah, I've said this on the show before. To me, it's very odd why people would get behind something like defunding the police.
Yes.
It's not even a partisan issue. It's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. I mean, if you just use your common sense, like, do you really want that? Because if you're in trouble, like, who are you going to call? I'll call 911. Call the police. Yeah, so
Yeah.
to me, it never made any sense from the beginning why they're politicizing this thing.
Well, it gained some momentum early on.
Right.
It's and I think that momentum is now dwindled. We know that Austin Police Department, I think it was $900 million, because Austin is really our San Francisco. I mean, like California.
Right.
So
Yeah, it
Austin,
is.
we understand what Austin is.
Sure.
And I believe it was a $900 million
Defunding?
defunding. But I
that's a
believe
lot,
that there was some initiatives put together, and I think they're going to get the money back. Because they realize, I think the people in Austin, no matter what side you are on, left,
Right,
right,
as I was
does
just
not
saying,
matter.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Everyone wants to live and feel safe and secure in their homes at night, especially for their children.
Right.
We want safety and security in their schools. I have 3 teenagers, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I don't want my children to have to worry about some person walking into the school and shooting up a school. I would put more officers and pay a little more in taxes to make sure our schools were safe and secure. Not that they're not, Jimmy, but what I'm here to tell you is the safety and security of our schools and our businesses and our streets is critically important to economic vitality. Make sure it's vibrant.
Absolutely.
We got to
Yeah.
have it. Otherwise, people will recognize it and they'll move on.
Yeah, and yeah, we don't want people living in our communities in fear.
That's right.
Or even like, we don't want good people leaving either,
Yes.
because that happens sometimes. And yeah, so I'm so glad we agree on this topic, because as I said, it's
Sure.
at one point I feel like it was going crazy. It was getting out of hand. It was a bit frustrating to me, because I've supported law enforcement officers for a while, because
Yes.
I learned early on that I was very lucky and grateful to have friends that were police officers, and that's when I knew, hey, these guys are just like my friends.
Yes.
They're not sometimes what they're portrayed to be. Sometimes in the mainstream media, they're not evil and they're not out to get you. No, they're just like your next door neighbor.
Yes.
Your son, your friend, your husband, anybody, just normal. They're very normal. Yeah.
And they want the best for their communities.
Right.
When you enter the law enforcement field, Jimmy, you don't do it for the money.
Right.
just
You don't get
because
wealthy from doing that.
That's exactly it. And a law enforcement officer knows that each and every
Right.
day.
Yeah.
Now, if they achieve a specific senior rank or become a chief, well, then they're making a little more comfortable of a living. But they know that could take them 20 years to ever get there. So those that enter law enforcement aren't in it for the money. They truly love service.
Right.
To protect others. That's applaudable for anybody that enters the law enforcement community, knowing the state of law enforcement today, where your integrity is questioned
Yes.
each and every day.
Oh yeah.
People question your integrity. Is he telling the truth? Is he not? And that should be a concern for any of us that live in America, because I think what you're seeing is less and less Americans, specifically young Americans, entering the law enforcement field. So today we have body cameras, we have audio recorders. Everything an officer does each and every day, it must be recorded, traffic stops, the case. And I'm for programs like that because it'll differentiate right or wrong, so on and so forth. But when you think of 30, 40 years ago, when I was a little boy, and I would look up at my dad's sheriff's deputies, what I saw was the shiny badge, and I saw the gun on the hip.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I saw. But I had such admiration and respect for the
Right.
uniform and what
Right.
the badge represented. Unfortunately, I think today that has diminished,
Yeah.
significantly diminished. You don't have people paying any respect to law enforcement anymore. They're calling them names and doing things they shouldn't be doing. And when your country erodes in the rule of law or law and order arena, that can spell a lot of problems
Yes.
for a country or a community. We've seen things taking place in Seattle, Baltimore, some of these larger metropolitan cities. But just like if you were that business owner that we praised, the small business owner, and you were in those specific areas where buildings were being burned, law enforcement won't go into the community because they feel they don't have the support of the community. That's a recipe for disaster, Jimmy.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Indeed.
I'm so glad you brought up the situation with the oversight for each police officer. I think it's gotten a bit out of hand. I feel like it should be that the departments, they should provide enough training and good equipment where they can trust them to do their job, instead of watching them 24/7 with all these devices that you had just talked about. Because that's what you had just gave us that anecdote for. Because back in the day, you trusted your police officers to do the right thing.
Well, Jimmy, let me add to that just for a moment.
Right.
So yes, they're carrying body cameras and devices to record conversations, contacts with the public. And I'm not against any of that. In fact,
Right.
the deputies at Precinct 4, we were one of the first to have body-worn cameras amongst the county agencies. But as the constable, when I would interview an applicant or someone that we were considering hiring, we would talk about integrity.
Yes.
Because some of the
I like
younger,
that. Yeah.
younger, if you're 25, 26, they see what's taking place across the country, how law enforcement officers are being assaulted, more of them are being killed. I mean, there's a war on cops. There is no question about it in our country.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yes. But I would sit with them as they would sit across my desk, and I would say, hey, listen, your integrity is going to be called into question. And it'll be called into question probably quite often. But always remember this. As an individual, I can't take your integrity from you. you have to give it away. So do the right thing each and every time,
Right.
and your integrity will probably not be called into question. And the point is, don't ever lie. If you lie, you've given away your integrity. I can't take it, you must give it away. And we'd have those conversations about integrity because it's a very difficult career today. And I pray for all the officers across our country, considering the state of our times. But I'm hoping we can get it back to what it once was, where there was respect for law enforcement. I think the pay needs to increase within the law enforcement
I agree.
community.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been out of it for now a little over a year. So I'll have to ask some of my leaders, or some of the leaders here in Fort Bend County, how recruitment's taking place.
Right.
What is their attrition rate? People leaving the field to get into some other field. Because I don't have any of that data, but I wish I did, but I think it'd be interesting to find out.
Right. Well, hopefully we can start turning that around from starting right here. That's why we're having these conversations. And, you know, what I like to do on the show is identify, you know, issues and problems in the community, and then talk about the solutions with,
Yes.
you know, people, the authority figures on those topics. Like
Yeah.
we've been talking about military, law enforcement, and even, you know, businesses, because you're a chief executive of a business. Going back a little bit, what was if you were to pick one of your favorites, would your favorite be military, law enforcement, or as a chief executive in a business? What would be your number one?
Well, if I look at the three different careers, law
Right.
enforcement, military, and now in the private sector,
Right.
I really can't say private sector because I haven't been in it nearly as long as
Okay.
the other two. You know, you're looking at 30 years,
Right,
pretty much
yeah.
my entire adult life.
Right.
But I've enjoyed law enforcement, but most of my true memories and greatest moments were in the military.
Okay.
And I say that because of what I alluded to earlier, the commands I've held, which is a significant responsibility.
Right.
And when I mentioned the deployments, because within the military, you develop bonds, very strong bonds,
Right.
specifically when they're in combat zones.
You saw a lot of that.
Yes,
Right.
and
Yeah.
as a result of that, I built lifelong friendships because it's never about you. It's the person to your left and your right, because your life may be in their hands and vice versa. So some of when I'm sitting back in my rocking chair at 75, 80 years, whatever the case may be, and I'm recalling back to my life, I think many of my greatest memories will be as a member of the military service. Not to discount the law enforcement, because I've had many great moments
Right.
there also. But if
Right.
I had to pick one, I would say the scales would tip toward the military, and then it would be very close second with law enforcement in my career as a police officer.
Right. Well, also in the military, you're operating on a larger scale. I mean, you were
Yes.
international
Indeed.
versus Fort Bend County. I mean, it's still a big county, but it's
Yes.
not the scope of what you're doing. There's a big difference there.
And Jimmy, and you're experiencing things
Right.
and overseas.
Yeah, you're
whether
traveling
it's-
everywhere.
Whether
Yeah.
it's Iraq or Afghanistan, and I'm
Right.
thinking of my time in Iraq and those I got to deal with, and the places I got to go, the Babylon ruins. If you recall the gentleman Muqtada al-Sadr in the Najaf, Iraq, I would drive by his house all the time. I mean, Muqtada al-Sadr, a significant person at the time. But you're a part of history.
Absolutely.
When you're involved in things of that nature. And the amount of government leaders I met in Iraq and Afghanistan and even in Kuwait, I mean, the names are still being called upon today. They're present. They're leaders. But you get that as a member of the military, specifically if you become a senior member in the military, lieutenant colonel, colonel. So I'm just thankful to God that I had the opportunity to serve in the military, and I don't have any regrets, none at all.
Yeah, I can tell just by
Yeah.
the expression on your face.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
Next, so tomorrow's actually Election Day. Any thoughts on Election Day and just civic engagement overall?
Well, all your listeners, viewers, listeners, I hope that they take the opportunity to vote tomorrow if they didn't vote early. What we're seeing in Fort Bend County is a low turnout. But I think historically, midterm elections are low turnout.
I think it's everywhere, right?
Compared
Right,
to a
Trevor?
general election. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know what the numbers are in Harris County, but I would think it trickles down into these suburban counties too. So, but I encourage everyone to vote. And it doesn't matter where you are, left, right. It does
Just
not
go
matter.
do it.
But just exercise the right, because many gave their lives
It's true.
for that privilege, because it's a privilege. You know, I was talking about you have a right to vote. It should be more of a privilege, sort of like a driver's license.
Right.
People think, I have a right to a driver's license. No, it's a privilege to drive. And you should look at voting the same way. Because if you want to participate in the Democrat process, go to the polls and vote.
Right.
And I encourage people to go vote tomorrow. Because
Yeah.
tomorrow, March 1st, is Election Day.
Yeah, 7 a.m., 7 p.m., is that correct?
I'm confident it's a good 12 hours, 7 to 7.
So you got a lot of time. Yeah.
Yes.
Go vote, get out there, and choose your best candidates for the job.
Yes.
And I want to mention real quick, and you are running for Fort Bend County Judge, is that correct? Trevor?
I'm a candidate on the Republican ticket for
Okay.
Fort Bend County Judge.
All right,
Yes.
just wanted to inform the audience because, some people may know, some may not.
Yes.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about, since you're a former military officer, your thoughts about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now with Vladimir Putin almost taking over the country of Ukraine?
And it's obviously something that is dominating the news cycle.
Yes.
Obviously, Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine. And I think that the world right now is looking at this situation, and the world's going to hold Mr. Putin accountable for it. I truly believe that. You hear through various media outlets, some think he's not thinking clearly. Why would he go to this extent? He can't win this, so on and so forth. But I caution people, or I want people to be a little skeptical about what they see. Doesn't matter what news station it may be. Just be skeptical about what you hear or see with the media today. And we can get into the media here shortly.
Yes.
But I think that Mr. Putin will be held accountable. I'm not sure exactly how far he rolls in with respect to Ukraine. I think the next 3 to 5 days will give us a good indication of what his true intent is. But I am of the belief that if he truly, truly wanted to take over Ukraine, he could have done it early on with shock and awe.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, he does have a significant military.
Oh, yeah.
And he could have done that. But I don't know if he realized the extent of the resistance. Because the resistance, you've got a lot of civilians involved.
Right.
And now you start talking civilian casualties, things of that nature. He could be held as a war criminal.
Yeah.
Don't know. But I just hope that this is resolved peacefully, because I feel sorry for the people of Ukraine. In fact, we did a little deal for the people of Ukraine in my church where we put some funds together to help out with the humanitarian assistance. And that's what I did. I did some of that in the military too, humanitarian assistance in some of these different countries. But I just think of the young mothers or the young children in Ukraine, that this is not their problem, this is not their fault. This is just a rogue gentleman, Mr. Putin, went into their country when all they want to do is just live peacefully.
Right.
The fathers over there get up every day, Jimmy, I'm sure like you and I. They want to get their kids off to school. They want to go to their job, pick the kids up after school, get them fed, do their homework, and just live peacefully. And that's what I think most people want to do across this world. They just want to have safety and security, raise their family, have enough money, take a couple vacations, enjoy life, and just have their kids basically take over one day, and then they can have children. And it's generation upon generation. Right now, I think what's taking place in Ukraine, I'm not sure a 7-year-old is very optimistic of what it could be like in 3, 5, 10, 15 years in Ukraine. But I'm hoping the global order comes together and holds Mr. Putin accountable for what he did. But I think it's a little too early on right now to determine what ultimately is going to end, or what's the end state of Mr. Putin. Because I can't figure it out, because I think what he's doing, I'm thinking, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make
It
I was
makes
thinking
no
the same
sense.
thing, Trevor. Yeah.
It makes no sense to me.
With the size of his military?
Yeah, with the size of his military and sort of what he's doing.
Right.
But, the fact that there's media outlets being able to publish or let us know some of the things taking place, that's good news. Because think about 40, 50 years ago, you didn't have that immediate contact or immediate information at your fingertips by just turning on the news, where the president of the country can do Zoom or through Facebook,
true.
whatever he does to let you know what's taking place. So that's a benefit to us.
Yeah.
But I hope it's resolved peacefully. That's for sure. I don't know what more our president's going to do in regard to Mr. Putin, but I know that there are more and more sanctions taking place.
Right. Even as we speak.
Yeah,
it's
I
happening.
think the pressure. Yeah. I think the pressure is going to build and build and build, and hopefully it comes out to a peaceful resolution, and Mr. Putin withdraws his forces, and Ukraine can get on, and then the Russian people hold their president accountable, because I don't think we saw or witnessed unrest or protesting like they are witnessing in Moscow today, where the people are saying, I don't agree with this. I don't think that took place in previous years or decades past, where the people of Russia really stood up. So I think the people of Russia are obviously letting Mr. Putin know they don't agree with his actions. Now, I don't know if it's a majority. I don't have any numbers.
Right.
But when you see what's taking place with protests in and around Moscow, it should be definitely something that Mr. Putin should take into consideration. But we know he's rogue.
Oh, right. Yeah, unpredictable.
Yeah.
Next, you mentioned a little bit about it earlier. Your thoughts on just the media overall, including some of the social media, in terms of that current state and how they're focused on getting out one message?
Yeah. And, you know, this morning, my 15-year-old son, Wyatt, and I do have 3 children. My daughter's 17, Madison. Okay. I have a son, Wyatt. He's 15, going to be 16 in May. He'll have a driver's license, so be careful out there. And then my 14-year-old's name is Parker. So
that must be a handful, Trevor,
yeah,
at that age
3
range.
Teenagers. So I stay quite busy. So I've got the 3 teenagers, and my son Wyatt comes down this morning. He says, Dad, is this going to be World War III? Are we going to go to war? I go,
right.
Son. He goes, well, all my friends feel that there's going to be nuclear war. We're going to go to war. There's going to be war in Europe, so on and so forth. And I said, son, where do you hear this? And it's TikTok.
TikTok?
So he sees different, and every teenager's tracking some social media site, right. Whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, in a variety of the different platforms that exist. Right. But he was describing to me a video to where I think some military people, and they come up to the person's door, and they pound on a door, and they say, we're going to recruit your son, going into the Army, World War III's coming. And young, impressionable youth may think that's actually taking place. So when I mentioned social media earlier, we have to, as parents, and I have to even be more responsible myself, my wife, Carrie, and I, about what our children are either watching on their computer through social media platforms or on their phones.
Right.
Because my son told me many of his friends actually think this is World War III coming. Until he talks to his dad, a military veteran, explains, son, settle down, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So when I look at social media, I look at big tech, and I look at the mainstream media, dishonest media, and it can be on the left and the right. Dishonest media, I truly believe those are existential threats to our country. I would say a dishonest media today in our country is more of a threat than the Russians. And you may be thinking, well, Trevor, why would you think that way? Well, look at how divided we are as a country based upon partisanship, a political divide.
Yes.
The vax versus the unvaccinated, the mask wearers versus the non-mask wearers, those that feel we need a border versus those that we feel don't need a border. There are just a lot of key issues there that divide, and I personally think it's dividing families. I believe marriages, Jimmy, I truly believe marriages have been affected, and divorces as a result of COVID, masks, or vaccines. Because I do not believe there is any true credible source today that exists where the American people can resort to get the truth with an issue that is very controversial. And I know you're much younger than I, Jimmy, but back in the day when I would watch the 5 p.m. news in the evening with my parents, there was a gentleman named Walter Cronkite. Well, when Walter Cronkite spoke to you on the TV, you thought, now that guy was trustworthy. And then we had, within your business, Paul Harvey. Remember Paul Harvey? Paul Harvey was a gentleman that he would talk on the radio, and he would give the news, and then he would talk about some different stories. But everybody, if you listened to Paul Harvey, you believed everything he said because he was credible.
Right.
And he was honorable. I can't think of today one person that I can watch on TV that's in the news and say, I believe that guy from the core of my being 100% and think it's truthful. That's the problem that exists today.
Right.
And we're divided, and we want to continue, or those that want to continue to divide our country. And that should be a concern for each and every one of us. And COVID is probably one of those issues, very controversial, that has really put a lot of division in our country. And it's sad. And it's all about the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. But whether it's the Biden administration, any other administration, even state, local officials saying, you do this, because I'm of the belief, I don't believe government should be telling us what to do each and every time when it comes to our health and so on and so forth.
Yeah, our private
There's
lives.
overreach. It's
Too
overreach.
much.
It's significant overreach. But I think you're seeing now a movement to through school boards where parents are speaking up.
Oh, yeah.
Because with COVID, everybody's at home, and now they see their children on the computer, and they may get a little glimpse or listen to what's being taught. And it may raise the attention of mom or dad to say, why are they teaching that in our schools? So I think that COVID has brought about this movement where parents are going to be a lot more involved in their children's education. Because
Right.
before, they just dropped Johnny and Susie off at school, they went to work, and it was Groundhog Day. So there has been some benefit to this idea of stay at home with school, because parents are going to be more involved in their children's education.
Yeah, I've been seeing it because the parents are frustrated, quite frankly. And some of those parents are running for like school boards.
Yes, and
And
justifiably
they won.
so. And justifiably so.
Right.
So you're seeing now the transition.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
cause and effect.
Right.
And I can't blame them. And I'm going to be more involved as a parent now
Good.
in my children's education as a result.
Right. And the good news is, Trevor, if people are looking to watch something credible, they can watch Trever Nehls and Jimmy Kim on the Jimmy Kim Show, right,
Indeed,
Trevor?
indeed. And you're going to get the straight truth 100%.
Absolutely. 100% of the time.
That's right.
All right. Next. So what can you explain to the audience some of the meaning behind some of those pins you're wearing? Because I noticed them earlier and I asked you, and I think they're really cool.
Yeah, and I'm proud to wear so I wear
Right.
cufflinks.
Right.
And,
Those
and
are very
the, And the
nice, by the way.
cuffling
Yeah.
is this here, and it's the Army War College, U.S. Army War College.
Right.
So
So that's for officers?
That's
the
for
Army
officers.
War College? Okay.
So it's a selection process. You apply to go.
So you can't
to
just pick to go there?
No. It's a board process,
Oh,
and you're
wow.
selected.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
They only take a certain number of
Right.
of officers, and it's lieutenant colonels or colonels at the time.
Senior officer.
And it's a strategic level course,
Right.
the Army War College.
Right.
And it basically prepares those to become general officers. You cannot be a military general, without being a graduate of a war college, whether it's Air Force, Navy, Army. So I don't want to be specific, but I'll talk about the Army.
Right. I mean, the next rank was general for you, right?
Yes,
After
it'd
colonel.
have been
you were
a
almost
one-star
there.
brigadier general,
Right.
and then you move up from there.
Right.
So I graduated from the Army War College in 2015. It's in Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. It is one of the most grueling courses I was ever involved in, and I've got a couple advanced degrees.
Right.
One from Central Michigan University. And when you graduate from the Army War College, you come out with a master's degree, strategic studies. So I assure you, Jimmy, when you leave the U.S. Army War College, when you graduate, there is not a Sunday morning talk show, meet the press, any of them, that you can't sit in there and speak articulately, intelligently on whatever topic exists. You get that level of training in the Army War College. And now you got to understand, 2015 wasn't very long ago. That was 7 years ago. So I'm already in my mid-40s when I attended the Army War College, and
Right.
and I'm proud to be a graduate, which is why I'm proud to wear the pin. And below that, the shiny silver badge is called a Combat Action Badge. So if you deploy overseas, you're in a
Right.
combat zone, and you're engaged in combat, you're awarded a badge.
Excellent.
So I wear the combat action badge, and I wear that proudly too.
Yeah, very nice. And I could see that, yeah, that training that you received from the Army War College, yeah. Because
Yes.
as I'm interviewing you and asking
Yes.
you every question, you're able to very effectively answer right on
Well,
the spot.
I hope I'm doing that. If not, please, I can provide some clarification
Sure,
if
no.
need be.
That I wasn't aware. How many years is that program? It's probably about 3 years?
It's 2
If
years.
It's a master.
The
Okay,
U.S.
2
Army
years.
War
Okay.
College is a 2-year program.
Right, but
If-
intensive,
You're
rigorous.
very
Yeah.
intensive. If
Right,
you
right.
go full time, it's 10 months straight full time. But many of us that are either in the reserve or guard, you can't dedicate 2 years.
Right.
So it's a lot of stuff done online, and then you go out for 2 weeks here and 2 weeks
Right.
there, but very demanding, rigorous course of War College.
Interesting. Okay. So your whole career thus far,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of your number one best moment? If you can
Of
recall
all my
something.
careers,
Yeah. I know once again there's a lot there, but just one thing you can go back on for the sake of time.
for the sake of time, I believe being elected as the Precinct 4 Constable back in 2012 was a wonderful moment.
Okay.
Now you got to remember, at the same time, my twin brother was elected as the sheriff, and we're very, very close.
Right. Yeah.
We live next door to each other.
Oh, really? Nice.
So if when he feels good, I feel good, and vice versa. But we were able to. We were successful that election night, where I won the constable seat, he won the sheriff's race.
Excellent.
So I will always remember that moment when we were headed to our campaign headquarters, and we got out of I drove and he drove, and we just happened to arrive at the same time.
Nice.
And we saw each other before we walked in, because it was a very big crowd.
Was it Freedom Hall?
No, it wasn't Freedom Hall. Believe it or not, it was at Clancy's.
I don't know where that is.
359.
Yeah.
So we didn't even walk in. We walked to the side and sort to the back, and I teared up. I think I was crying, but it was such a great moment, not only for myself and my family, but also for my twin brother, because I felt very, very good for him too.
Right.
So it was tears of joy, but I'll never forget that moment.
Right.
And then graduating from the Army War College in 2015, that was a memorable moment for me, because believe it or not, there were times I didn't think I was going to finish.
Wow, is this that difficult? Yeah.
It was for me.
Yeah.
But it took sort of resilience, encouragement. I contacted my instructor, and my instructor provided me some encouraging words. But in the end, if you put your mind to something and you finish, that's applaudable.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
and that's what I did in those circumstances. So the 2012 election was a great moment. Of course, 2015, graduating from the Army War College. Wonderful memories.
Yeah, truly inspirational to the audience out there.
Thanks.
Whenever you had any adversity in your life,
Mm-hmm.
how did you overcome and keep going?
Adversity.
What is your best strategy for coping with that?
Your faith, my faith,
Oh, you're in Christian?
absolutely.
Okay, that helps.
My
you.
faith in God
Yeah.
has brought me through the different times in my life, challenges, adversity, crucibles in life, if you want to resort to it as that.
Right.
But back in May of 20, one of my deputies was shot and killed while responding to a burglar alarm out in Sienna Plantation. And his name, Caleb Rule. In fact, this past week, Fort Bend County dedicated a building, a public safety annex, and it's called the Caleb Rule, R-U-L-E, Public Safety Annex. And it's located out there toward Fulshire off the West Park. So it was back in May of 2020, May 29th. In fact, I wear his bracelet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. His wife, Eden Rule, provided this bracelet to me there in the building dedication. But when I think of some of the adversity, it was the early morning hours of that May 29th when I received the call that one of my deputies had been shot. So then immediately you're thinking, well, who shot him, so on and so forth. But as I am responding to the scene, I found out it was a friendly fire. It was a sheriff's deputy that had shot my deputy. And my deputy died as a result of the injuries. But that's a day that you will never forget. So if you ask about those moments as a police officer, law enforcement officer, that is probably the one day in my 30-year law enforcement career I will never forget that. And I've had some others.
Right.
But that specific time was because no leader, chief, constable, sheriff ever wants to
Have that happen.
where one of their deputies is killed. And that happened on May 29th of 2020. And may Caleb rest in peace. He will never be forgotten in Fort Bend County. That building's named after him, and it's appropriate. And I believe his family and his children now know that Caleb will never be forgotten in Fort Bend County. In fact, there's some legislation that came out of Austin, and it's named after Caleb Rule, where the children of law enforcement officers or public safety professionals that are killed, I believe that there's an education fund that will allow them to go to school.
Right.
And I'm in agreement with that. I think they did a great job by passing that so that Caleb's children will be able to attend college.
All right. Well, condolences go out to Caleb,
Yes.
his family, and the
Yes.
department.
Yes.
And to wrap up the show, Trevor, so one tip to be successful in military and law enforcement. Your best advice to anybody out there.
Never compromise your integrity. Always tell the truth. You know, sometimes I tell my children, it's not the act itself, it's lying about it. So for example, if your teenager has a 10 p.m. curfew and he comes back at 11 p.m. and you ask him or call your teenager to question and they lie about it, say, no, I came home at 10. Now their integrity is called into question.
Right.
And it may be that way for many, because you're going to lose trust with the parent.
Yes.
So even if you enter law enforcement or military, just always be yourself, but be honest. Don't lie, because lying's going to do you no good.
Yeah, people
and
figure
other
it
people
out.
are going to sort of recognize that, and now your integrity's called into question. And when you and I were talking earlier, the deputy would sit across, or the applicant, and we'd talk about integrity.
Right.
Never compromise your integrity.
We're on the same page, Trevor. That's one of my favorite words.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Trevor. Colonel Nehls, salute. And
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on to the show. And to the audience out there, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week, Monday, 12 to 1 p.m. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.